So our Wednesday labs will mostly be these short check-in meetings where we won't literally stand up because it'll be virtual. So you can sit down, you can be in your pajamas, whatever. As long as you don't have a guest speaker, I don't care. You will basically give me a couple of seconds, a couple of sentences on what you achieved in the past week, what your next actions are, and what your blockers are. So what's in your way? What's keeping you from achieving the goals you want to achieve in the time frame you want to achieve it, right? So every week each team will give me that. And it doesn't have to be like, there will be 2 teams, so it doesn't have to be like team 1 will give me a soundbite and team 2 will give me a soundbite. Everyone can participate. We're not literally going to be trying to achieve this in 5 minutes with everyone standing, as we would in an actual stand-up meeting. But in order to give me a sense in class of what's going on, y'all have to talk to each other before class. So today I really want to solidify some strategies for not just getting y'all in the habit of speaking out to each other, but also get a sense and a plan in place for how you're going to communicate when we're not meeting in person. So we'll be meeting in person every Tuesday, but most of our work has to be done out of Meet space, in virtual space, right? The other thing I want, before we get into discussing that, the other thing I want to say, and this is kind of a difficult subject to bring up because we don't have context for it as a group yet. There is a call for a general faculty strike next week in support of Black Lives Matter. The Black Lives Matter organization and affiliates are calling for a general academic strike. They're calling it a scholar strike, like professional athletes have chosen to do, to voice opposition to racial oppression and to police brutality. I have given this a lot of thought and been very deliberate in my decision making, but I want to be accountable to y'all with my decision making because we are practicing democracy in this class. I feel that because the work we're trying to do here has implications for equality and has the capacity to be anti-racist, that it's in the interest of anti-racism to meet together and do our work. I don't stand to lose pay if I take the day off, so it wouldn't be a sacrifice on my part. I would miss you, and that's all I would lose, right? I would miss seeing your beautiful faces, and otherwise I stand to lose nothing. They're not going to fire me over taking a day off. I don't stand to lose my position. It wouldn't be a personal sacrifice for me to make, but I do feel we would lose out on instruction time that we can use to do anti-oppression work. This course is about anti-oppression and about undoing oppressions that have implications for race, even though race is not the stated topic. And so I've decided to hold class as usual, even though I think the strike has merit, and I think that faculty in different kinds of positions have a much bolder statement to make by participating in the strike. I think that my contribution to Black Lives Matter is to do anti-oppression work with my students, because that's the space I have. That's where I have power to do that work. So I hope that y'all can respect that position and will be okay with having class anyway. I understand there are also student strikes that may take place, and I want to walkouts and things like that, and I want you to know that I'm in solidarity with that, and that if that takes place, no one will face consequences from me. Whether you are striking as part of an organization you belong to or in solidarity, I do ask that you I will be holding class for whoever shows up. I will be doing the work that I can do for as long as I can. And I will be doing it in a way that I hope expresses solidarity and care. I will record class, and if no one's going to show up, it'd be great if you told me ahead of time. Like if you're deciding to strike as a group and you would like to let me know ahead, that would be super, because I'll just record a lecture and post it. So please give that some thought. We have important decisions to make. Despite what people will tell you, your professional life is not all that matters. If we don't have safety, if we don't have freedom, we don't have anything. And if all of us are not safe, then none of us are safe. If all of us are not free, then none of us are free. So doing activist work, protesting injustice, is every bit as important as anything you're going to learn in a lecture. So I want you to know that I respect you and I'm with you whatever you do. And I hope that you can respect the position that I'm in. So thank you all for your kind attention to that question. I also, with that as not necessarily the topic we have to discuss, but as certainly a topic that's on the table, let's go ahead and kind of debrief from this week. I'd like us to get in the habit of speaking out loud to each other on Tuesdays, even though today is Thursday. But for our in-person classes, I'd like us to get in the habit of speaking together. I'd also like to clear up any questions you may have lingering from the week, and talk about what we're going to do moving forward. So first, let's talk about the reading. We read Participatory Action Research as a method and as a practice. I'm forgetting the title. It's been a long time. I just think of it as the participatory action piece, as a method and as a theory. So what are our initial responses to this reading? Hello and welcome. Yes, Teresa.
My honest initial response, like speaking about just even representing the Xerox Corporation portion of it, goes back to my love-hate relationship with corporate America, how the management team can be condescending on its workers and how they don't think the workers have actual capabilities of thinking from their perspective, and not respecting that the employees are actually just as smart, if not smarter, on how to actually operate businesses. So I did appreciate the approach where they understood that it required two parties. And then overall, I like how it understands, even pertaining to the work that we are going to do, that the work is no good because it's the same as going in and telling somebody what to do. It's kind of like somebody telling you put your right shoe on first and then put your left shoe on. But it doesn't matter, you're accomplishing the same thing. Or why are you telling me to put my right shoe on first? Is it more efficient? Is it better, et cetera, et cetera? Do I want to put my right shoe on first, right? So, overall, that part, it kind of bothered me a bit because it just reminded me of how condescending other management can be.
That's terrific. So I want to kind of synthesize some of what Tarika has shared and kind of check that with her, which is power dynamics. The main kind of difference between participatory action research and how participatory action research seeks to be different from traditional forms of research is that it seeks to undo power differentials. It seeks to mitigate or to lessen, to relieve power differences. So participatory action research is about removing the power dynamic that traditionally exists between academic researchers, us, and community members. And there are two kinds of ideas I want to give you. There are no sociology prerequisites for this class, which I like. I'm glad there aren't. But that means that there are two concepts sociologists are familiar with that people from other disciplines may not know so well. The idea of studying down. This happens in all sciences, but social sciences get called out for it a lot. The idea that when we study anything, we study those who are marginalized. We study those who have less power. This happens in medical science, for example, when we decide that who we're going to study are people with diseases, right? Medical science is about the study of disease, right? We study what makes people sick, and how to make those diseases better. What we typically don't have are like wellness doctors are not a specialization area in medicine. We don't have doctors who just study what makes people healthy and studies healthy people to figure out why they're so healthy and then try to extrapolate from that, right? In the same way, social scientists tend to study what we consider social problems, right? But we tend to study down. So if the problem is wealth inequality, right? Or the problem is poverty, well, there are two sides to that coin. What we have chosen to do is take this condition of poverty and say, what makes poor people poor? Why are they so poor? Why are they living in poverty? And what can we do to fix that? What we haven't chosen to do is look at wealth and say, why are wealthy people so wealthy? How did they get wealthy? How do they remain wealthy? What do they do with their wealth once they have it? How can we extrapolate from that to distribute wealth in a more just way, right? That's not the approach we've chosen to take. We're studying down instead of studying up, right? And so we tend to do that a lot. When we study gender, most people think of it as like a women and queer issue, as opposed to like a straight men's issue, right? I remember a conversation with my dad in which I informed him that he had a gender. He was like, why would I care about gender studies? And I was like, well, men have gender. And he thought for a minute and said, I suppose we do, yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. I was like, you have like a gender of your very own. And he was like, so I do. And I was like, okay. But he didn't know because he'd never thought about it, because that's not how we talk about it. And in the same way, we don't talk about race from the perspective of the dominant group of whiteness. We talk about race as if racial injustice is the problem of people who face oppression. When in fact we could say, how did white supremacy take hold in this nation? Why do white people have the advantages that we have? How do we distribute those advantages in a way that works for everybody, right? But we've chosen to study the marginalized instead. And feminist methods, which is where participatory action research comes from, is all about lessening power differences. And so participatory action research is about how can we take the advantages of the academy and use those in service of community. Use those in the interests of and with the participation and agency of the community. How can we democratize that power? And so what Tarika was sharing about the power difference and condescension, that's exactly what participatory action research seeks to avoid. So how can we do research in a way that doesn't highlight power difference and double down on power difference? How can we democratize maybe we need to name what kinds of power we have as academics. You may not think of yourself as an academic yet, but just by virtue of being in this chair, in this room, where you are right now today, you are an academic. You are thinking and acting as an academic. Welcome. We have cookies. We can't eat them together, but we have them. Just kidding. There are no cookies. So how do we, what kinds of power do we have by virtue of our affiliation with a college or university?
Access to resources.
Yeah, exactly. We have access to resources. What resources do we have access to?
Like health services on campus and counseling and the career center and basically everything in Morton. Also like, I guess the library and the technology we can use,
Yes.
that stuff.
Is it Mary Emerson?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. We're part of a system that has set us up to succeed, right? You are part of an institution that exists to help you succeed. This is wonderful news. That's a lot of power. What other kinds of power do we have as academics, as students and faculty of a college? Yes, or
I'm not quite sure how to word with this, but bear with me. There is a bit of like power in societal hierarchy because people often regard those in connection to like secondary institutions as like more as like arbitrarily like automatically smarter or it automatically puts them in a position of power just because of the biases that we have in our society.
yeah, we have prestige.
Yeah, there's
Prestige. We have prestige associated with education. So I come from, my immediate family is very educated. My parents and both my brothers have terminal degrees. My parents are medical doctors. My brother is a PhD in education, and my other brother is an attorney. We're very educated folks. We're the only ones in our family who are, right? In our extended family, my parents are the only ones who graduated from college until like my generation, right? So my aunts and uncles will call me on the phone and be like, hey, I'm having these weird medical symptoms. What should I do? And I'm like, hey, call a real doctor. I'm like, I love you and I like care very much that you're not feeling well. And you should call a medical doctor because that's not what I am. And you're like, what do you think though? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not special. Like, I don't just magically know things. Like, that's not how any of this works. They also ask me what I think about politics, as if I'm a political scientist. And I'm like, bless your heart. What I think doesn't matter any more than what you think, right? There's no reason you should be listening to me. And also, I don't want to have a fight. I just want to eat dinner. Like, please leave me alone. I've got to eat sometime. But that's I'm just kidding. I totally fight over dinner. That's a power that we have as prestige, right? We assume that educated people are smarter. We assume that educated people know things just because they have education. That's good. Yes. Yes.
Not just college in general, but like our college in Alabama, we have a lot of privilege to go to this college, and we have lots of connections that we get because we go to this college.
Yes. Kaylin.
Yes.
Right? Yes. I'm making sure I'm practicing names. Good job, Kaylin. Yes. So say more about that, please. Unpack that a little bit.
I mean, like, for example, our college is like one of the top ones for education. So like, if you get a degree, if you're in education, you're probably going to get a very good job.
Mm-hmm.
That can be with any of our majors. You'll probably get a very good job because you go to this college.
Yes.
Kind of adding
Yes.
on to what she said, especially if you're in like Greek life, you have a lot of connections like throughout your whole life. Like
Mm-hmm.
you could run into like somebody you want to work for and find out organizations whatever. So, I mean, you can't really, you have to be at college to like be in front of all that type of stuff. So that's
Mhm.
also an advantage to what you
Right, I'm sorry, dear. Were you here on Tuesday?
I wasn't.
I didn't think so. Can you remind me of your name, please?
Katie.
Katie. I can't like see your whole face, so it's hard. Thanks, Katie. Yes, so we have networks. We have, in sociology, we call that social capital. We call it social capital. The idea that we basically have things we can draw on to make our lives better, right? Networks, resources, connections. This is our social capital, and this college affords us a lot of social capital. Other thoughts on, so let's think about social capital and prestige in terms of positionality. Where are we as an institution located? We're in Birmingham. What is special about Birmingham? Again? Yes, say more about our history. What's special about our history?
Civil rights.
Yeah, we're a home of the civil rights movement, right? I've been thankful to live in Atlanta and Birmingham, which are kind of the cradles of civil rights. You know, there was a moment when it was not very clear which city would be kind of preeminent economically. It turned out to be Atlanta as like a wealthier city. But that's because in response to the civil rights movement, decisions were made, right? Birmingham decided to be very passive in its governance and its approach to civil rights as a city. Certainly not its citizens, but its administrators. And Atlanta decided they were going to be the city too busy to hate. Like Atlanta decided, that was literally their motto in the 80s. The city too busy to hate. And a lot of that has to do with leaders of industry in both cities. So in the 1960s, when Birmingham was being called Bombingham, because there were so many church and house bombings and incendiary bombs being thrown, Martin Luther King Jr. won the Nobel Peace Prize. And traditionally, when a person wins the Nobel Peace Prize, their city holds a celebration for them, like a ceremony and a celebration. And no one in Atlanta bought tickets or RSVP'd yes to Martin Luther King Jr.'s Nobel laureate ceremony party thing. And so Coca-Cola, Asa Candler of the Coca-Cola company held a board meeting. I'm forgetting which Candler it was. I don't think it was Asa. A Candler held a board meeting, like the chairman of the board of Coca-Cola held a board meeting and sat all the shareholders down and said, listen, gentlemen, Coca-Cola does not need Atlanta, but Atlanta needs Coca-Cola. And Coca-Cola cannot afford to be associated with a city that won't honor its Nobel laureates. It's decision time, friends. And so it sold out within the hour because the board of Coca-Cola bought up all the tickets and distributed them. But decisions were made. But Birmingham is a cradle of civil rights, right? It was a very important center for civil rights. Why was it such a hub, such an epicenter of the civil rights movement? It's okay, we're not all history majors, and this is not a history class. Yes?
Because for example, when we came to Birmingham, that they would fight back, the police would fight back to protest and everything like that, and that would get more media attention.
Yeah, so it was a strategic center. Birmingham was a site of racial tension already because it was a largely black city. Not only was it a largely black city, it was a very, Chicago was a largely black city too. But Birmingham was built economically on the underpaid and under-rewarded labor of Black people. It was in a way that other major cities with large African American and Black populations were not. Birmingham was based on exploitative labor systems. It was part of the Jim Crow South. It was, it was a former center of plantation agriculture, but also labor lease industry. Labor lease is where people who were imprisoned, largely for status crimes, their labor was sold to companies, and the prison industry made money off the sale of that labor. So it was basically enslaved labor. And Birmingham's iron and steel industries were largely built on that. So there was a history of racial oppression, racial tension, racial frustration that made it ripe for resistance, right? And it was a center of a lot of Black poverty. Like, it was a center where there were wealthy pockets and wealthy suburbs for white people, but it was hyper segregated. And while there were burgeoning Black middle class folks by the time of the Civil Rights era, it was a very segregated city with a lot of racial segregation based on economic segregation based on race. So Birmingham, we're located in Birmingham, and although this class is not representative of that, we are a white institution. We are a historically white institution, and we are a dominantly white institution. We're working on it, and we're not there yet, right? We have, as an institution, we have strategies and goals of increasing diversity and inclusion and equity, and we're making progress slowly, but surely. I feel hopeful about it, but we're still a dominantly and historically white institution in a dominantly and historically Black city, and especially in a dominantly Black neighborhood. So something we have to think about is institutional whiteness. We have to think about the fact that we're dealing with communities of color who have been historically disadvantaged, and we're coming from an institution that doesn't have the best reputation on that, right? And the most credibility. So how do we democratize power? How do we, now that we know kind of what we've got, how do we share that power, give that power, distribute that power to our partners? Yes, Katie.
I know what we were talking about over when Kristen came to speak. Instead of going into these neighborhoods and saying, here, let us fix you, ask them what they need, ask them what they want in the community to help them feel like they're also helping their community, and it's not just us.
That's right. What does that look like? How do we do that? That's the right answer. Good job. How do we make it happen?
I'm not sure.
No, that's okay. Aaliyah?
I feel like
Oh, I'm sorry. Who was speaking? It was Aaliyah. Okay.
I feel like it would be basic communication, just going around and asking people, like you said, what they need, and then our ability to put into action to doing it. So I just feel like it's basic communication. Just talk to people.
Yeah, ask and listen. Asking, listening, intellectual humility. So Kristen used the word humble. I like the idea of humility. Being a Quaker and coming from a background that's actually Pentecostal, I'm just steeped in modesty and humility. It's a whole thing. But the idea that I don't know anything special, and you are the expert on you. You're the expert on your life. You're the expert on your community. I am good at thinking through things, but I don't have that body of knowledge. I don't know what you know. So intellectual humility is vital to this process. what should be the goal of participatory action research? What are we trying to achieve here? Yes.
Like kind of improve understanding between the two groups with like, and then in addition to that, like some sort of service project, but not just a service project, but there needs to be a level of like empathy and understanding that goes between them.
That's right. Partnership is a goal. Partnership is not just a box we need to check. The relationship is the product. The relationship is the goal. We learn and we work through cooperation, through solidarity, through partnership. We need to partner, and the partnership is a large part of the goal, because that can be an ongoing relationship that we can then work through and build on, right? Partnership is the goal. What else are we trying to achieve through this research? Let me ask in a more concrete way, with the hope of drawing out some folks who haven't spoken yet. What about at the end of this work when somebody says, what did you do in your class? What do we hope to be able to tell them we did? Say again?
Impact somebody?
How? Yes. Say more.
I guess impact somebody in a sense of change. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the question, right? What kind of impact are we hoping to have? What are we hoping to be able to say, I did this, we did that. Together with our partners, we achieved the following, right? What are we hoping to be able to say we have done? So, I want to hear y'all's take on this. There are no wrong answers. It's like I'm asking you what you think, right? You're the expert on that. There's a 0.0% chance you're going to tell me what you think, and I'm going to be like, no, you don't think that. Yes, Katie.
Personally, like I would like to say that like we as a group and as partners with the community have made like a long-lasting change, like something that just won't be for the next couple of months, something that the community can like work on together to continue to improve.
Yes, yes. Sustainability. Beautiful. That's a great goal.
And consistency, like just continually doing what you're doing instead of just doing it and then stopping.
Right, so I want to actually, that's a great goal, is consistency and continuity. But I want to emphasize continuity of the relationship, not continuity of a given project, because hopefully the kind of project we'll be working on is one that will have lasting change after it's complete, but one that we'll be able to have it done. It's called capacity building. Where basically the goal should be to create an infrastructure, to create a system of doing things, or a mechanism that can then be used to do more things better in the future, right? Like these virtual town halls, we've never done this before, right? With Greater Birmingham Ministries, with the Poor People's Campaign, they've never had these virtual town halls before. The goal is to have a new way in play, a new system in place for constituents to communicate their needs and their interests and their concerns to lawmakers. So hopefully we get this system set up and then it just exists. And then we can move on within that relationship to work on new things, right? But yes, being consistent partners. There's a joke I always heard growing up as a child that was, a couple had been married for 50 years, and one day one of them says to the other, I want a divorce. I don't want to be married to you anymore. And the other one says, why not? And the first person says, well, you've never told me in 50 years that you loved me. And the second person says, I told you on our wedding day, if it changes, you'll be the first to know. Right? if you have a friend who just never communicates with you, or if you're in a relationship where you never receive, input from the other person, the relationship dies, right? And the same is true with community partnerships. If we forge this partnership and then neglect it, we have failed. Now that is not on you as individuals, right? Because you're students taking this class for a semester, and you may decide in the future that this is not the work you're here for, right? It's on us as an institution and me as a faculty member to maintain these relationships. But that is a goal of participatory action research. Now, you have some responsibility to bear here, because if you show up and screw around and don't do a good job and don't take the work seriously, then it may be impossible for me to nurture that relationship in the future, right? You could kill it for me, but you probably won't. So no pressure. A little bit of pressure. Someone who hasn't spoken yet, tell me a goal you have for the class. For the project specifically. It is okay to say just a couple of words, but I really want everyone to get in the habit of saying something. If you are a person who knows that you cannot speak out loud in class, and it's just never gonna happen, come talk to me after and we'll sort it out, okay? But I really want you to get in the habit of communicating out loud if you can. This is a safe space where all your colleagues will support you.
Personally, I just want to give back to the community because I was born and raised in Birmingham, and obviously it's an integral part of my life, and I just want to be able to give back some.
Yeah, great. So AJ wants to be able to connect with his community in a new way, right? You want to be able to feel that you are contributing to the relationship that you have with Birmingham. I love that. Birmingham has been important to you, and yeah. Who else feels what AJ is saying? That like, this community is part of my life and I want to be part of its life too. Yeah, that's a beautiful sentiment. For some of us, Birmingham may not be our home yet. It may not be where we're from. It's not where I'm from, but it feels like home. My dogs are from here. I love them. My students are largely from here, and I love y'all. Great. Thank you, AJ. I feel like Asia was fixing to say something. Were you going to say something, Asia?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm actually not from here, but I've been here for 2 years. I don't know where I'll be the next 2 years, but I'd like to get to know the community. I've been here for 2 years, and I know the campus still. I really don't know the surrounding area or the people living, and I'd like to.
Yeah, so I think a beautiful thing about social science and sociology in particular is that it gives you a new perspective of where you fit in your world. It can elucidate for you where you are located socially, where you are in your community, and what it means to be part of your community. And not a lot of social science, not a lot of disciplines can make a claim to teaching you who you are as a member of your society, right? Sociology has that. We're very powerful. Yeah, I think that's a great goal, Asia, to connect with Birmingham as a community. I think you'll also learn connection is a skill, right? Thinking about your position, thinking about where you fit, thinking about how you contribute, thinking about where your strengths are, is a skill set that I think you will build through this project and then be able to take with you into new communities and new settings. So wherever your life takes you, I think it will be good. That's terrific.
I just want to piggyback just off the history. I don't want to change the subject.
Sure, that's fine.
You don't know this area, and I just want to give people an idea of this portion across the street from the gate. Angela Davis' childhood home is just a few blocks away, right? I don't know why it's not a historical marker. That drives me crazy, okay? But the street that she lived on, it was like the last black street where the white people lived across the way my aunt would describe it, rock wars, right? You throw rocks at one another because you thought your race was the better race and stuff. And this is where a lot of the bombing occurred in this area right here.
Dynamite Hill.
Yes. And Birmingham, and I just learned this recently, the reason there were so many bombs, that the environment and just this is one of the few places where all of the ingredients you need to create dynamite is right here in all of this soil. And that's like the significance of why there were so many bombs. I just learned that probably in the past 6 months, right? And so, but yeah, just even just across the street, just all of the history just with that one neighborhood, I think it's College Hills, right? And so, just to give you an idea, you know, yeah, just that part.
Yeah, so we have a few minutes, so I just want to go here because we've already kind of touched it, and I want to unpack it. Who's familiar with the term intersectionality? Almost all of you, terrific. What is intersectionality? Yes.
Like the idea that multiple, like all of your identities affect each other, so like you can't just live in one, but like they all make a difference on each other and you live those in different ways because of all the identities that you have.
That's right. All of your identities impact all of your other identities, right? And poverty in this country is racialized. We cannot talk about poverty as a system of oppression without talking about the systems of oppression that intersect with it, right? We can't talk about poverty in the South and poverty in Alabama and Birmingham without talking about race, and specifically without talking about blackness and whiteness. Like, we could try, and it would be a false impression. I could try to really avoid race as a subject in this course because it's not a race course, but boy, would I be tricking you. Like, I would just be lying to you for a semester, and it would be bullshit, and you would all know. You would all know that it was nonsense, right? I'm trying to swear less as a person. It's my New Year's resolution every year, along with being more radical. So I hope I'm not offending anyone. But we have to talk about racialization of poverty. We have to talk about the fact that not only are people of color, and especially Black Americans, more likely to live in poverty, they're affected by poverty in ways that are compounded by racism. There was an article in, I'm trying to remember what newspaper, it was a major news outlet, about an interracial family who had their home appraised for the real estate market. It was in Florida. And they had their home appraised, and the husband was white, the wife was Black, and their son was biracial. And they had their home appraised and were disappointed with what it appraised for. They thought it was too low, right? And so they decided to have it reappraised, but this time they hid any trace that Black people lived in the house. They took down family photos. They took down photos of Black relatives. They took down posters and books related to Black history. They took down anything that they thought seemed Black or African. And after they'd done that, the wife took their son to the park and let the white husband meet the appraiser alone. And the appraisal of their home went up 30%, by $40,000. Just because the appraiser thought it was a white home instead of a Black home. Now, so one fact is that people of color are more likely to live in poorer neighborhoods. I live in a neighborhood that is euphemistically described as transitional. My real estate agent called it that when talking to me about it. He was like, it's up and coming. And I was like, okay, bullshit. Like, I've done some I've done the research. We've been calling this neighborhood up and coming since the 70s, right? Like, it's up and staying, right? Like, it's not going anywhere. And he was like, it's close to downtown, it's close to your work, it ticks all your boxes, right? It's got a yard for the dogs. It is a nice, quiet neighborhood with good neighbors. Would you consider living here? And I was like, yeah, totally. Why wouldn't I? It sounds great. And he was like, well, you know, some people don't think it's a great neighborhood. And I was like, why not? And he was like, well, just drive around and see if you feel comfortable there. And I was like, okay. So I went and told my husband, there's something he's not telling us about this neighborhood. Like, I got to research it more carefully. Like, there must be crime stats we're not familiar with, or like some like environmental hazard we don't know about. Something's got to be wrong with it. So we did all our research and we couldn't find anything wrong. And so we were like, what's wrong with this neighborhood? We don't know. So we went and drove around and we were like, it looks lovely. There are people on their porches. There are people waving when you drive by. Like, there's landscaping. It looks great. What's not to love? And so we told our real estate agent, we drove the neighborhood. It looks great. The commute to work would be perfect. No problems. Let's move forward. And he said, did you drive it on a weekend when there are like people home and like out in their yards? And I was like, uh-huh. Yeah. We did it on a Saturday. And he was like, okay. And I was like, do you think that we're afraid of black people? And he was like, sometimes people are afraid of black people. And I was like, okay. He was like, understand where I'm coming from. I've tried to sell this house and it's fallen through 3 times because people figured out it was in a black neighborhood. And I was like, oh. And he was like, yeah, people like are racist and that's a problem with real estate. So like, yeah, my neighborhood is a little run down. It's not like the nicest, fanciest neighborhood. And black people are disproportionately likely to live in neighborhoods like mine that are a little more run down. But also, that rundownedness of the neighborhood is compounded by bullshit like I encountered, right? The rundownedness of that neighborhood is compounded by racism, right? It can be both. It can be systemic racism compounded by interpersonal racism. So yes, we're going to talk a lot about race and racisms in this class because it's nonsense if we don't, right? I would be giving you a very surface level picture of how poverty emerged in America. Now, that doesn't mean we're only going to be talking about racialized poverty, right? We're also going to be talking about rural poverty, which is more likely to affect white people. We're also going to be talking about gender and poverty, about aging and poverty, childhood and poverty, other identities that intersect with poverty. But this is also a moment in history where whatever I teach you, I need to teach you what's going on, right? And this is a moment where, as an educator who cares about racial equality, it's a time and space that I can teach about that because everyone is listening, right? So I have that moment, and I'm going to take that moment. We're also working with 2 predominantly and historically black community partners. Church of the Reconciler is a mostly black community, as is the Poor People's Campaign has its history in the black civil rights movement, right? So that's going to be a discussion point. Wow, we talked too much about real estate. So I want to know what strategies y'all are going to use for communicating with each other as a team outside of class time. I'm outside my yellow tape. I'm sorry. I need to stay in my little box.
Does everybody have group names?
Yeah.
We could just do a group name.
Yes. I think, is everyone okay with that?
I mean, that's fine, but I think we also need to consider people's schedules and people's availability or what group people want to work with, to take into consideration all of those. Just more so than availability.
So what would be what about doing a group me? And how could we solve the idea of figuring out when everyone is kind of free to work on things?
We have goals and
You could do a poll for time availability for work time, right? How's the easiest way to set up a group meet? Does everybody need to, you know what? Let's do a group email instead of passing around a piece of paper and touching it. That's a good thought, Aaliyah, but we're gonna do this virtually. We're gonna do this virtually. I'll send out an email right now.
So we put it in Teams, that way it's a file, that way instead of sending out 30 or 20 emails.
You could also do a Google form. That way all the submissions are in one place and people aren't putting like their phone numbers out on a public email loop.
I'm gonna do a Google form, collect everyone's email, and send it to Aaliyah. Does that work? Or I can just, you know what? I can just copy and paste everybody's email and send it to Aaliyah.
Do you have to do phone numbers?
Is mine the one? I mean, Brittany's phone number.
I am so elderly, like I am geriatric up here. Yes, I'll do a Google form for everyone's phone number and send it to Aaliyah. Or if Aaliyah wanted to, she could put her phone number out there and then everybody could text Aaliyah their phone number. No, don't do that, okay. Okay, I'm thinking like an elder. That's okay. I spend most of my time around older folks. We're also, I think, going to use Google Forms. Is everyone, or not Google Forms, Google Docs? And maintain like a Google Docs folder for each team to work on their project. We haven't assigned groups yet. Does anybody know for a fact that they definitely want to do Greater Birmingham Ministries Poor People's Campaign? Is anyone already definitely there? Kaylin is shaking her head yes? Okay, Kaylin. You could be in charge of that team not like in charge like you're the boss, but like in charge of managing communication for that team. Is that a role you're comfortable having?
Sure.
Okay. Who knows for a fact that they want to work with Church of the Reconciler? Is anybody there yet? They definitely want to do like trauma and poverty and homelessness.
I'm like 90% there.
Okay.
Also about 90% on that side.
Great. So AJ and Vari, is one of you more comfortable than the other with being in charge of managing communication for a group?
I'm good with it. I already do a lot of. Give it to you then. Okay. I
Okay.
already do a lot of that, so I can do that.
Terrific, Vari. And if you change your mind, this is fine. You can just let somebody else know. Okay? So for the time being, we've got Kaylin in charge, of the Poor People's Campaign. And we've got Vari in charge of communication. And we've got Vari in charge of communication for Church of the Reconciler. Yes?
When you do the Google Docs, can you just make sure you put which group you want to be putting, so we're not.
So we don't have to start that yet. I just want somebody to be in charge for when we do start it.
Okay.
If people aren't sure yet, I don't want to put them in a group and then have them changing willy-nilly. So let's just wait. We have 5 more minutes. Are there any pressing questions that people have? Wait, no, we don't. We have quite a bit more time, don't we? We have like half an hour, 25 minutes. Okay, so we have Google Docs for managing work. We have a group me. We have a Teams. So I'm still learning Teams. I know how to do the things I have to do in Teams, but I don't know how to do the things you need to do in Teams, which is a liability, right, on my part. So I don't know how to allow. I think I can create breakout rooms in Teams maybe. And if that's possible, then what I can do is when we have our Wednesday lab meetings, I can create 2 rooms. I'm going to work on that and see if that's possible, so that each team can kind of get their story straight and then talk to the big group. What questions do y'all have about this project? about communication, about workflow, about anything. Yes.
So I'm still slightly confused on what you mean by project.
Yeah. You're not confused. We just don't know yet.
Okay.
Confused would imply that there was an answer and you didn't understand it, but there's not yet.
Okay.
So let me dig a little more. Would it be helpful to others if I dug a little more into like how this project is going to take shape?
Please,
Yes.
please.
Oh, terrific. That's a point of anxiety I was not aware of. Thank you, friends. Okay. So can everyone still see me if I sit down? Yes? Okay. Democracy in the classroom is practice for democratizing power and knowledge with our community partners, right? What this means is I'm not necessarily in charge of these projects. I am grading them, but they are your projects that you are going to design together with your colleagues. You are looking at the people who are going to design your project with you, plus your community partners, right? What's going to happen is our community partners are going to come talk to us. They're going to, one next Wednesday, we'll hear from Avery Rhodes from Church of the Reconciler. And then Wednesday the 9th, we'll hear from Carolyn Foster from the Poor People's Campaign. What they're going to do is tell us what they have in mind, right? They're going to tell us what they want us to work on for them. So they've already shared with me, which is what I've foreshadowed for you. Avery Rhodes is going to talk to us about programming around trauma and healing from trauma associated with poverty and homelessness. And then Carolyn Foster is going to talk to us about virtual town hall meetings for people affected by poverty and their lawmakers, right? But these people are going to talk to you about exactly what they are looking for and what they have in mind and what your role is. They promised to send me some more information a few days before they come to talk, so you can look over that. I think I haven't posted much for Avery Rhodes yet, but I think I've already got some stuff up for Carolyn Foster, because I kind of thought she was coming first, and then they switched on me. So I'm working on it. But so hopefully by the end of the day today, I'll have some stuff up about Avery Rhodes and her work. You will work with them to get an idea of what's needed and what kind of the end goal is. And then you will have a meeting with me. Like I'll be there, but it's your meeting. You'll have a meeting that includes me, that isn't run by me, where you will decide how you're going to achieve those goals. And it's altogether possible that your partner will have goals in mind that you cannot achieve, realistically, right? It's possible they're going to want you to do things that are beyond the scope of this class, or that you could do if this were your only thing going on right now, but you can't do in about 12 hours a week, right? 10 to 12 hours a week, which is the most I ever want you to work on this class, not like what I want you to do every week, right? If you ever find yourself spending more than 12 hours in a week on this class, quit.
Okay, all right.
Stop it. Don't do that. You have lives, and your lives are more complicated than ever, and some of y'all have like kids, so like whole kids. Entire children. And some of y'all have like parents that need things and like siblings that need things. Some of you are like homeschooling your little brothers and sisters right now and stuff like that. If you find yourself spending more than about 12 hours a week on this class, put it down. Walk away. Have a snack. Take a nap maybe. Do something different. But don't let this take over your life, okay? So I want you to think seriously about what you're able to achieve and commit to. But the point of our weekly check-ins is to kind of check on how that's going and make revisions if necessary, right? So you will have, there will be a moment where you will design the project you want to create with your community partner. And you'll say, here are our goals that we want to achieve by the end, and here are the steps we need to take along the way to make that happen. So the steps along the way are called benchmarks. Like, this is how I'll know that I'm on track to achieve my goal. If I've done this by this date, I'll know I'm on track, right? So you'll set some goals and some benchmarks for yourselves, and then we'll check on those every week. And if you find yourself way behind, or you find one thing to be much harder than you anticipated, or you find one thing turns out to be impossible after all, we'll revise those goals. And maybe something else will happen. Maybe you'll say, hey, this turned out to be way more straightforward than we thought. It's October and we finished. Well, then we will talk about how to expand that project and what else can happen, right? But it will be up to you. I will give you a grade in the end based on how well you have done what you said you were going to do, right? But the point of checking in every week is that I'll know the whole story. I'll know what roadblocks you hit along the way. I'll know what came up for you. I'll know what turned out to be much harder than anticipated. I'll have the full picture the whole time. Now, I'll only know that if y'all are communicative with me, right? I'll only know that if you talk to each other and talk to me and tell me the truth. If you trick me because you're embarrassed about failing, and you're like, hey, everything's going great, I'm just gonna believe you. Like, I'm a trusting human being, and I'm just like, oh good, they're doing great, right? If you are having trouble, it is important to tell me immediately, because I can only help you if you talk to me. I am not a mind reader. Yeah, I'm working on it. So if y'all are communicative with each other and communicative with me, we will have a great time. The point of communicating with each other, when you parcel out tasks to each other, like, because you're going to be in charge of making assignments for the group, right? You as a group will decide what each person is going to take on. When you find that what you took on is too hard for you, you've got to let your group know. When you find that, like, something came up in your life that's keeping you from doing your share right now, you need to let your group know. Letting me know matters, but letting your group know will define the success of the project, right? Because it will affect everyone else's ability to help you and cover for you. So let's talk about some anxieties we may have about group work. Does anyone feel especially anxious about doing group work? If you are gonna have anxiety about doing group work, what would you tend to feel anxious about? How do you tend to be as a group worker? Is there anyone like me who tends to just take the ball and run with it and be like, ooh, I can get in charge of this? Vari? Anybody else just love to take on the leadership role because then they control where they're at? Maybe Asia a little bit. A little bit, okay. Anybody else? Yeah, maybe kinda. Who feels like if they don't know exactly what their responsibilities are, they just shut down? That's a couple of people, okay. I think the stand-up meeting format is really going to help with that, because we will parcel out tasks to everybody in a really explicit way every week. And we'll be like, here's what you're in charge of doing this week. But knowing this about yourself, you know not to shut down, right? Knowing that that's your tendency, you now know, okay, I'm feeling a little lost, I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to ask somebody, right? So if you know that's you, maybe get an accountability partner on your team, like as soon as teams form. Because sometimes having a buddy is a lot easier than having like a group to report to. Who feels they would do well with the buddy system? Great. So your buddy doesn't have to be someone who shares your tasks, right? I have an accountability partner for my publishing, like for my research and publishing. My accountability partner is my department chair. Every Monday, we're just like, hey, you write anything this week? Yeah, I did. What was it? It was a method section. Great, you want me to read it? Sure, right? We check in with each other on Mondays about how we're doing with our publishing agenda, right? We're not even doing related research. We're doing totally different research. So we're not writing together. We're just checking on each other because we love each other, right? So find a buddy if that would be helpful for you. Who feels like, my problem with group work is that I don't like to depend on other people. I like to just keep my head down and do my own thing. Okay, that's several people as well. Yeah. What helps you to overcome that challenge? When you have to work with other people, what makes it a better experience?
Communicate.
Huh?
Communicate.
Communication, yes. What kind of communication? What do you need to communicate about?
Just again, just status updates. The other people being proactive with their status updates. Not have to beg people for what's going on. And honestly, if you have fallen behind or, and transparency. And for some people, accepting that you may not be a critical thinker, understanding that about yourself and if that person knows that they're not just saying them being honest
Yeah, so
about that.
you've said a mouthful. That is a career in corporate America speaking right there. Well done. Thank you, Tarika. So she's given us a lot of good insight. So what we need to do is communicate quickly, especially if we're falling behind, right? If someone gives me a task and I've fallen behind on it or hit a roadblock, I tend to think to myself, well, I just won't tell them about it till I've solved the problem and can turn in what I need to give them. And one of the most important skills I've learned in academia is when I've fallen behind on a target, that's when I need to send the email. The second I realize I'm not going to have this done the way I need to by the expected time frame, right? That's when I need to send an email and say, hey, just letting you know, I'm still working on this. Here's where I am with it. Here's what I'm dealing with. Here's when I expect to have it done after all, right? That's what you need to do. Who feels like their problem is fear? Who feels like group work makes them afraid because they're afraid they'll disappoint someone or afraid they'll fail? Yeah. So we're taught that discussing our emotions is unprofessional, and that's a lie. It may be unprofessional, but it's super necessary, right? Because our emotions are like our whole thought life, right? Our emotions are like they're us, right? We are a big sack of emotions. We're just like meat and electricity, and that's all we are. So, and the emotions are the electricity, right? So, you are just a feeling robot. You need to discuss when you are upset. You don't have to discuss it every time. Like, I have emotions I don't name, right? I just think about them and then work through them on my own and then move forward, right? But maybe someone has disappointed you or hurt your feelings, and there's a way you can gently and kindly say, hey, I'm having trouble working with you because when you said this in class, it made me feel like I can't talk to you about this problem, right? Maybe you need to say, hey, I'm feeling really bogged down and frustrated by this project right now, and it's making me feel really unmotivated. Who feels like they would want to have those conversations with their teammates if they were relevant? Who feels like I would want my teammate to feel safe telling me about their emotions? Look around and notice that that's pretty much everyone, right? Pretty much everyone in this room is here for that. Your colleagues want to know when you're having trouble? Who feels like, in the interest of getting the project done successfully, I would be willing to help someone through a hard time if I felt they would do the same for me? Yeah, that's pretty much everybody too, right? All of y'all are willing to help each other and listen to each other and express concern and care for each other. That's going to make us a really powerful team. And that's going to make our projects really successful. Who feels like they have a better understanding of what's going to happen now? Who still has questions? Who feels a little confused but doesn't know what their questions are yet? That's a lot of people. Okay, your questions will become clearer as we move on. So I'm not gonna try to guess what your questions might be. I want to tell y'all a secret, and it's really early in the semester to be doing this. But you're gonna figure it out, so I'm just gonna out with it, okay? Who's nervous about their grade in this class? Who's feeling some anxiety about their grade? Okay, only a couple of people, that's good. There is no reason whatsoever to be nervous about your grade in this class. I don't care about your grade. That's the secret. I just don't give even a single crap. Not even one. Do not care. If it were up to me, everyone would have an A. I have to be able to justify the grade I give you, or I would just pass out A's right now, and then we could do the work together, and everything would be hunky-dory, right? I don't have that kind of power. I have to be able to explain why people got their grades if somebody asks, right? But if you do the work, and you're making an effort, and you're trying your best, you're gonna do fine. The lowest grade I've ever given in this class was a C. The person did not show up. They stopped communicating with their team mid-semester. They made no discernible contribution to their project. And when they did show up, they slept a lot, right? That's what you have to do to pretty much, they still did the test. Like, they technically turned in the work, so I couldn't fail them. But like, if you're making an effort and trying your best, you are all set, okay? I care a lot more about what you take from this class intellectually and emotionally and spiritually than I care what meaning like in your heart, right? Then I care what grade is on paper, right? I don't want an adversarial relationship with you where you feel like your goal is to make the highest grade possible and my grade is to stick it to you and like deduct points for every little thing. Not gonna happen. I have like a real life with like a family and everything. I'm not looking for excuses to deduct points from you, okay? So hopefully that gets us off on a right foot and gets everyone feeling good, right? Your grade is safe. Just do your best, okay? Also, everything is crazy right now forever, and I understand. So my life is crazy too. There is a possibility that we're going to go online at some point. Like, we all know that's a possibility, right? Okay, hopefully it won't happen. Hopefully there will be a vaccine and everyone will take the vaccine and we'll all be safe. But if that happens, I just want you to know that I've already planned for that, made contingency plans, and everything will be okay. So if we get an email over the weekend, as we could, hey, everything's canceled, all your classes are all online now. Please don't worry, everything will still work. Okay? Okay. That's all I have to say. Does anyone have any closing thoughts for us? Okay, I want to say a thanks for all of your positivity. Please post to the reading discussion forum. I think there was a question about whether you had to do 2 things or 3 things. You have to do 3 of the 3 things that are listed in the syllabus for the discussion forum, but you don't have to do each of the 3 things. So like, you could do 1 thing 3 different times, or you could do 1 thing 2 times and 1 thing once. or something like that, right? Or you could do each of the three things once. So the three things are respond to one of my questions, respond to a colleague's question, or write your own question. Yes?
Okay, where are your questions for this week's reading?
Missing. I have failed you. So I was trying not to say this. I was at the doctor all morning. I'm passing a kidney stone, which is more information than you probably wanted about my body, but that's what's happening right now. So I have not posted those questions, and I'm fixing to go do it.
That's all right, take your time, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't
Yeah.
looking in the wrong place.
I'm gonna like drink water and cry first, but it's, no, just kidding, I'm not gonna cry.
You will.
I mean, eventually, yes. I've had these before, so like it's not that scary. I was just like, they're gonna have to get it out. So, which is way more information than you needed. Like I'll have to have some little operation, but not the scary kind, just the wee little kind of operation. So it'll be okay. But I'm gonna go post those questions now. Everybody like wish me luck. And
Take care of yourself.
oh, thanks. And just do two of those. Just do two of those three things, right? I will make it possible for you to do the first thing in like 20 minutes. Okay? Okay. Everyone have a lovely afternoon. Now we're not typically going to meet on Thursdays. This is it till the end of the semester. But in general, Thursdays will be all virtual. So I'll see you on Tuesday and then not again on Thursday.